trouble with Anne. So.
Okay, yep, right, no problem. We'll chat away then.
Exactly. Hi, good morning, everyone. We're having a few technical difficulties here. So for the time being, I'm going to start by introducing myself and John. So John is joining us today. He was the governor of Mountjoy Prison for over 22 years. He published his autobiography, The Governor, in late 2010. And in 2013, he wrote another book on parenting with the title, Parenting, Raising Your Child in Ireland Today. Nowadays, he delivers talks on a wide range of subjects to communities, voluntary group workers, and students. Joined with us as well this morning, we have Anne. Anne has several decades of experience as a research scientist, educationalist, broadcaster, writer, and motivational speaker. She now works as a management trainer and psychotherapist and uses her extensive life experience to create an intimate and energized atmosphere as she shares information, research, and opinions, all wrapped up with her general sense of humor and knowledge. So welcome both. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So on the theme of resilience, we've already heard a little bit about it from Dr. Eddie Murphy, and we'll be continuing that discussion today. John, I'm really interested to hear from you. Given the pandemic and what we're experiencing right now, there's really no end in sight that we have to hold or to grasp. And I'm wondering, have you seen any parallels in your own work when you were governor?
Yeah, certainly. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I actually have mentioned this a few times over the last 6 months in relation to the pandemic, because most people have been confronted with the reality of the pandemic for the first time ever in their lives, that there's such uncertainty. We love certainty. We love to know. You hear people all the time saying it. I'd love if I could know when it ends, even if it's a number of years, if we had a date, if we had something to aim for. And of course, in prison, and certainly for some people who are sentenced to indefinite sentences, that was one of the things that I often spoke about and highlighted. People serving life sentences, for instance, where they have no idea when they're going to be released. And to try to cope and to try to keep your motivation up and to try to keep positive and try to implement all the things that Dr. Eddie mentioned earlier on in that environment is very, very difficult, because we do need something to aim at. And so the pandemic is creating that for us, that uncertainty, that period of we're in a space and we don't know when we're going to get out of that space. And that was very much, when I was talking to prisoners who were starting off, imagine meeting a man or a woman starting off a life sentence and having no idea, will I be out in 10 years, 20 years, or will I ever get out? And one of the things I used to always say to them is, you have to start by living every day as a day, every day at a time. And the second thing you must do is you must just accept your reality, because psychologically that is so important. To say, look, this is my reality just now, and the best thing I can do now is just to live every day at a time and make the best of each day, and then hopefully I will get to the end of the journey. But to accept your reality, and for all of us at the moment, I think that's a very important thing, that this is the reality we're in. It's not what we'd like to be. It's just, this is our reality. A lot of the things we're so used to are gone as when you go to prison. A lot of the things, your freedom, your friends, all the sort of wonderful things we have in life that Eddie was talking about, we should be enjoying, all those disappear with prison. But you have there and I suppose for me, what resilience is mainly about is being able to adapt to whatever is thrown at you, and to say, right, it's a new challenge, but I'm going to make the best of it. And so it makes us more aware of maybe the things that are nearer home rather than the foreign holidays. We have to start looking at home, maybe family life that we didn't take any notice of before, the friends we have, the small things, as Eddie said, that we maybe took no notice of it before, walking the woods. Now maybe walking the woods is a wonderful therapy. So it is about making the best of what we have and adapting to that. And believing that, life, as Eddie said as well, life throws up all sorts of challenges. We love certainty, but there's no certainty in life. And that is one of the things you learn as you get older. There's no certainty in life. So you've constantly to be prepared for that, whatever that new challenge is. And finally, I suppose I'd make the point in that, like in prison, especially starting off prison, what people often need is people to support them and to encourage. They're two very important things. To encourage encourage, and to support people, and not be afraid to ask for help. I think that is huge as well. Sometimes we the virados of, we think we're bravados and we think we don't need, especially, may I say this, especially men. Men are particularly poor at asking for help. This manly thing, you're a softie. Men are human beings the same as women are human beings, and all other people, we're all human beings. And as a result of that, all of us at times will feel vulnerable, will feel weak, will feel in the need of support. And I suppose my little message would be, in a time like a pandemic, don't be afraid or don't be inhibited to ask somebody to help you.
Yeah. Very wise words there. And I think you've touched on so many important aspects of resilience. Life has become simplified, and finding the pleasure and the joy in the small moments that we would have overlooked are very important. I think also, just to paraphrase as well and just reflect, there's an element of wisdom that comes with resilience and aging. Understanding our limits, and knowing our skill set. And resilience is very much a skill set that we can grow. And Anne, I know you've done a lot of work in this area with the various groups that you train and the individuals who you support on one-on-one. So from your perspective, what is maybe the key thing or misconception around resilience that you see people trying to grow their resilience but really struggling along that journey?
I really think that my colleague John put his finger on it. It's a whole set of skills. It's not just one. And people forget that they have to widen their experience, their opportunities, and use those, especially in this time. And I've got a list of about 10 different very key elements which I like to work through with people, most of which have already been mentioned. Thanks, John.
But just as you said there, Anne, there's an opportunity to grow. And John, you mentioned in your book as well, The Governor, which is an exceptional book. I highly recommend it as well. Looking at how people can either grow or disintegrate through adversity. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that and what you've seen?
Yeah, I suppose I was responding a lot that time at the public attitude to people who are put to prison, and I suppose particularly in relation to maybe via high profile, disgusting, in inverted commas, crimes. And the public's reaction is, be locked away, throw away the key. You often heard that expression. And, lock them up for a long period of time and then expect miraculously that they were going to come back out again after 10, 20, 15 years, whatever the period was, fully developed, fully grown human being, far more responsible, far more conscientious, far more law-abiding, all this and stuff. And I began to sort of observe the human journey, really, and said, well, if you do that, a human being is not a robot. You just can't throw it into a room, lock it up and think. So I came to the conclusion from observation, really, that the human being either grows physically, emotionally, psychologically, all the different elements throughout life, from birth to death. Physically, we grow for a period and we mature, and then we go back again, we regress, and we end up, if we live long enough, maybe on a wheelchair, unable to walk, and emotionally and psychologically. So what I meant, believed and observed was that the human being was either growing or regressing. And if you were spent a long period, and I would call 3 or 4 years, and any longer than that as a long period in prison, it was almost inevitable that you regress, because you hadn't got the contacts and all the experiences that, for instance, Eddie was talking about, because you were locked up in a very confined place, psychologically as well. You hadn't you hadn't your liberty, you hadn't the choices, you hadn't decision making, you hadn't the contacts with children, with all the different contacts, and so as a result of that, it was very, very difficult to emotionally and psychologically, and often physically as well, to continue to grow, and you are more likely to regress. And it's the very same in our own lives outside of prison. If we don't don't be active, if we don't involve ourselves, if we're not open to other things, if we don't appreciate a lot of the things that are wonderful in our lives, the simple things that we take for granted and that the pandemic are after making us far more aware of. You know, the freedom we had before the pandemic to go as we liked. Well, now we're beginning to realize, my God, we were privileged. It was such a wonderful privilege.
Yeah.
And just to be conscious of that, but the whole growth thing for me is all about many of the things that we take for granted, but being conscious of them. I think sometimes we miss up wonderful experiences because we're not conscious. Like nature, for instance, I'll finish on this. At the beginning of the pandemic, I'm sure most of your viewers had this experience. I heard birds for the first time ever in that early period, because there was so much stillness and I was listening for birds. So when I went for a walk or a run in the morning, I heard thousands of birds. Now, I was running for years and I never heard the birds at all. And so it's because you're more tuned into nature. I want you to observe now, now we're into the autumn and all the wonderful things that are happening by nature. I'm talking about going for a walk in the woods. That's a wonderful therapy, a wonderful experience. Good for in every way, psychologically, emotionally, psychologically.
Exactly. And Anne as well, just coming back to you and your book, you speak about gremlins and just kind of continuing that theme of, you know, we are what we feed our inner selves psychologically. Can you talk to us a bit about the gremlin metaphor that you've created and how and linking that to that resilience piece and how we can feed our resilience?
Absolutely. It's been quite a long time in coming to get the gremlin concept, but it's very obvious. We all have an inner gremlin inside us, and it behaves the way we feed it. So give it fear, anger, all the other emotions, that's exactly what comes out. And people need to realize that they're a big part of themselves and the outcome, how they present and how they behave. So my gremlins look a bit like this. You can see that. They're cartoons. This one's pretty happy. This one's contented. And that one's very definitely spiky. So there's about 30 of them. And it just helps people to understand how they come across. I think so often people are very unaware of the effect they have on others. And if they're not very sensitive, they don't care. And that can have a big effect on how people react to them. So I noticed somebody said they wanted the 10 tips. Do you want me to do those?
We can go through a number of them.
Very quickly. The first one is stress awareness. Stress, misaligned word. A lot of people use it badly and wrongly. I see it as an adverse reaction to too much pressure. So it's not good for you. Stress is not good for you. Pressure is good for you. Pressure is something that stimulates, excites, and makes you feel better. So it's distinguishing between the two that is key. Then John touched on challenge and thriving on competition. It's important to be part of a group and not to be in constant aggression with people, but working with and challenging yourself, usually to be better than you were the last time. Commitment, prepared to do what it takes. Number 4, self-confidence and self-esteem. How many people I find don't like themselves? It's quite an interesting thought. When you ask somebody, do you like yourself? And they say no. How do you expect other people to like you?
And self-esteem, just to interrupt there, was something that really came through in the work and the work that you did with the prisoners that you saw as well, John. Understanding how a lot of people who came to prison had very low self-esteem, very low levels of education, and it really fed into their a low level of belief in themselves and how they can overcome challenges, how they can grow, instead of feeling that all the pressures, all their environment was there, fully formed and unable to be changed.
Yeah.
It was probably the biggest single handicap that the vast numbers of people had coming into the prison was that absence of any self-confidence, which is hugely significant in our lives. The person who believed in themselves and the person who isn't is not arrogant or over powerful, but has enough of self-belief that I can do this or I'm good enough to do this. And this whole thing that Anne has mentioned of what we say, we are our own biggest critics. There's no question about that. If other people spoke to us like we speak to ourselves, we'd have them in court. We'd challenge, we'd take a legal action against them. How dare you say that to me? But I can say what I like to myself, and it's usually negative. So it's about in the prison context. I believe that's why education was so important. The absence of it in prison played a huge part to that self-esteem. Because that's one of the biggest benefits that we often are not conscious of education. It gives us greater belief in ourselves, and it makes us aware of more things that we're, for instance, entitled to. So when you're aware of things, well, then you have a better chance of aiming towards them, and the belief that. But it's not just confined to prisoners. I have often told myself about my own mother way back. It's a long time ago now, but when my mother was we were young, and my mother had low self-esteem because she had to fit into the status she had in the community. So when she went to buy clothes, for instance, the shopkeeper knew exactly the price of clothing that she was able to afford, and she would say to herself, "That coat is too good for me." Nobody should ever say that about
Yeah.
No, not at all. And I think there was a link in there to your model as well, Anne, because I know emotional intelligence is a key part of that as well. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that feeds into resilience?
Yes, it's about being aware of your emotions. People often realize sometime afterwards how they came over, how they were feeling, and learning to acknowledge and read your own emotions as well as others makes for great conversation, great connection, things move forward. So emotional intelligence is key in business, life, etc.
And to be honest, many of us here today would not have had that formal education. We wouldn't have had someone leading us through these steps in our school lives. It might be through trial and error, unless you're a specialist in this area. And so that's a really challenging aspect of building resilience if you can't name emotions, if you can't accept, if you can't embrace emotions, and if you can't find a way forward through them. And I think just the other continuum of that, of the self-esteem, is the kindness, compassion, and the empathy piece that I know you both are really keen advocates of as well.
Certainly are. Don't forget humor.
Yes, humor.
Humor is a marvelous part of resilience. Sometimes laughing at yourself is good as well. And just enjoying something, taking yourself out of yourself with humor, but not being nasty. You've touched on that as well, John. And the other thing is optimism.
I think it's very important not to confuse assertiveness with confrontation or arrogance. Assertiveness is again, insisting that you have a right to be heard and that you have a right to partake and all that. Confrontation is a negative form of that, where you're confronting people. I just want to say about empathy as well, Davina, because I think modern technology has done a lot of damage around that whole area of empathy, because we can do an awful lot of damage to people without ever seeing them, without ever knowing them, through technology. And I am concerned actually about young people in the modern world and the absence of empathy, not being aware of how other people feel, not being able to empathize with how a person is in a certain situation, and the damage that we can do by just comments about people. It can be done on, as I said, through technology, but it can be devastating for the person. And the person who caused the problem in the first part, or instigated, have no idea or no feelings And that is, at least if you're on a face-to-face confrontation issue, at least you can observe how the other person is reacting. But on technology, you have no idea. And so we have to be very sensitive about what we say and how we say things. As Eddie mentioned, to other people, it can be devastating, especially for a person who is so already low self-esteem. They're not going to be able to respond. So what they will do, they will just go regress further.
And
Absolutely.
And just to come back to Anne, on the last 5 tips that for the resilience model that you worked towards, will you be able to share that with us?
Yes, very quickly. Support from your family, support from your friends, support from your colleagues. Absolutely essential. And as John said, it's about asking for that sometimes. You know, it's acknowledging you're a friend, acknowledging by doing something for someone else. So social support is really important at all levels.
And in fact, it's the biggest indicator of resilience from the literature, that social support element. And just during this time, during the pandemic, we're seeing our networks being challenged, and that's going to have a natural impact on mental health, resilience, everything. So I think it's important to fight for those connections and try to find new ways to connect as well.
Yes, and interestingly, this is an interesting way.
Exactly.
And I think more people are doing it. I've done so much on other platforms, and it's been very effective to keep connections going, which is so important. The other 2, one is optimism. I think we need to have a level of positivity, expectation, and enthusiasm. Optimism is a strength, and so often people say you're too optimistic. I don't think you can ever be too optimistic. So there we go. And finally, flexibility. Being flexible. You mentioned this, John. Being flexible, being prepared to go with the flow, change your ideas, do something different. You just need to look at my resume. I've done about 5 different jobs, all quite big jobs, and just through circumstances. Everything, teaching music to children in Dubai, to being a forensic science in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And now I'm a psychotherapist. So being open to opportunities is fabulous. It's really.
Yeah, it's definitely important, that fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. If we're adopting the fixed mindset, it causes much more distress and pain and suffering, whereas the growth mindset allows us to have a more of an ease as we flow through our challenges, and those could be life challenges, but they can also be personal ones as well. I know we're talking a lot about resilience on the individual level, and we've talked a little bit about social support. And I think that's a real key piece of resilience that is missed. A lot of the times we will place the onus on the individual to be resilient. But I think there's a note to be taken around how there's a societal level of resilience, which needs to be built. In your experience of work and life, of how we might go about feeding into that and nurturing that level of resilience at a much larger level.
John?
Yeah. Look, I again, going back to my work days in prison, that was a very big part of the job, or the challenge, was to try to build up that in a community where you had no sort of common sense of purpose, you had no unity, no camaraderie, especially within the prisoner population. And so it's done. I suppose you have to be conscious of that people need all sorts of. I suppose one of the things I learned sometimes is that, and you mentioned it yourself, Davina, if people are not aware of, for instance, their own emotions and their own feelings, and they're not aware where they're coming from, see, it's very, very difficult for them to be able to do anything about it. So sometimes you have to help people, not in enforcing. I said, you can't force change on people. You can't force people, or you shouldn't would never try even. But what you can do is encourage, and you can suggest, and you can help people. So building up, for instance, I initiated in Montreal when I was there a crazy thing for the public, for many people in the public, and that was a drama project. Structured drama. Now, people would say, why would you be doing that in prison? Well, drama is a fantastic vehicle for building up self-esteem, camaraderie, discipline, which is huge in life as well. And I suppose I just mentioned this, maybe, Davina, in relation to the current pandemic and the pressure on people to work from home, because some people work from home by choice, and it's brilliant. But some people are forced to work from home as well. And for those people, we have to be very conscious. Employers have to be very conscious. Society has to be government are very conscious of what they're going to miss in all this sense of camaraderie, the whole social element, and the support element of going into work and meeting somebody, having a little chat. Compare that with sitting at home in a room on your own, day in, day out. We have to, and so that type of thing, bringing people together in a team, having objective. We did a lot of charitable work. That was fantastic, not just for the end product of the charity work, but for what happened during the journey. When meeting people coming in, explaining what they needed done, going to hospitals, maybe bringing in sick children to see what they suffered. All of those things help to build up this sense of we are a group of people, a team of people. And finally, I suppose when I started in Mount Joy first, way back in 1984, I held the first staff meeting ever in the history of the prison. And the prison was in operation since 1850, but the staff had never come together as a team, as a group of people. And I brought them together psychologically really to say, look around this room, 300 people, you are the staff, we are the staff. And that sense of who we are, this identity thing, of this sense of belonging, we're all in this together. And that's what I suppose camaraderie is all about, supporting one another. It's not about self, it's about, supporting and encouraging other people. And I can't emphasize enough in the workplace as well, what a few words of encouragement. We're far quicker to condemn people, to criticize people. I believe, by the way, that criticism, like punishment, is a waste of energy. But encouragement, on the other hand, is very, very motivating for people. And I used to see it in the eyes of prisoners who were never praised, for instance, ever in their lives. One word of praise, you could see the little sparkle in their eyes. And it was registering, my God, somebody has said something positive.
And someone's seen me and someone's acknowledged skills in myself that I hadn't seen before, and how powerful that can be for an individual looking to change other areas of their life. Anne, I just want to ask you a question. In your time, you mentioned there being a forensic scientist in Northern Ireland. You must have seen and been exposed to some very distressing scenes, as I'm sure, John, you would have experienced as well in your time as governor. I'm wondering, with that newness, with, the unplanned situations and scenes that you were put into, how did you cope, and what was the process of adjustment of experiencing those situations which you could potentially only imagine or see in a film?
Yes, I just got on with it, really. That tends to be my approach to life. I find myself in a situation and just get on with it. So I'm very fortunate in that way. Some people, my psychotherapy practice, need to help to see that, or need to practice doing it. So it's very much about assessing the situation, deciding what I can benefit the people with, and get on with it. So forensic science, yes, it was pretty horrible. I don't mean that. It wasn't horrible, but some things you saw were horrible and sad and difficult to understand sometimes, how people would do things like that. But you have to be pragmatic. I was there to do a job. I was there to do a good job, get as much information as possible from the scene, take it away, discuss it with the police, and then discuss with my colleagues back in the lab. And that's what I did. When I went home at night, I left it all behind the door.
That's very interesting because, John, I know from the last chapter in your book or towards the end, you said exactly the same thing as a coping mechanism. Can you talk to us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, I just want to say, and it's so right. I mean, I haven't been many people who have said that and been able to implement what Anne said. Because I was always saying it to other people and just say, you couldn't do that. Well, I did it as well, like Anne did. And that is a survival, part of the survival kit, in my view. You must leave work where it is. You must leave family where it is as well, in the morning. There's no, I often say that to parents, for instance. Don't be burdening your children with your problems. Like, if you have a financial problem, fine, deal with it, but don't be saying your children, you only for you I'd have more money, or only for you I would be behind in my mortgages. And the same in my own child. So my strategy was, you do your best, you take it, when it comes. I suppose your gut feeling also, that instinct that you have by nature. And I would have had a positive instinct and maybe a caring instinct, a compassionate, but that's a gift from life, from a gift you get. It's not something to be boasting about. But so in crisis, which I had, like Anne had, many crises, you just responded to the crisis as best you could at the time. The crucial thing was, for your own well-being, was to go home, get in the car, and that's it. And I found physical activity. I've started involved in coaching and sports with people and all that. And after one of our most traumatic periods, then that very evening when we had a very hostage scene, as I wrote in the book about, and but that evening I ended up down in Sandymount Strand, which was all over, training and doing stamina training with a senior hurling team. Now that was fantastic, that you were able to leave a very tense, traumatic situation, go down and run for 10 miles and you can imagine the psychological benefits of that, and the relaxation of it. And so that's what it's about. I think it's very important to have, I call it at the beginning, self-discipline. You must discipline yourself to certain things. And one of them is controlling your own mind. And don't let your mind control you, because if you do, the negative will take over.
Can I just say, I sing in a choir, and I play sport, and I just do a walk. I walk with my lovely dog, fabulous, along the canal. It's lovely. Doesn't matter what the weather's like. We go out anyway because he has to. So people need to develop these types of things, join choirs, join groups, get out and stop making such a big thing about little things.
I think it's, creating that full life, creating meaning both in work and outside of work, and finding your place in communities and finding activities that you engage with to enhance your own well-being. I've got 2 questions here, and then I think we're running out of time. So the first one is going to you, Anne, and it is just to say, did you encounter any skepticism when you changed careers so radically?
Oh, yes. I was forced to change careers because my then husband was an international loss adjuster. So we were all over the world. And sometimes I joined him and other times I was left at home. So I did different things, but I always made sure I appreciated the people that I joined. When I went into forensic science, I was 23, and the 4 men in the laboratory could have been old enough to be my father. So I gave them respect until they had respect for me, and we could all work together.
Yeah, thank you.
So you have to be sensible about that.
Yeah, and take your time as well, I think. Take it at your own pace. And then, John, the question here for you is, do you think that lack of empathy can be related to the lack of self-awareness?
Interesting.
Wow, gosh, that's very complicated now.
It is.
It depends.
Two very big topics.
Yeah, this is more. I think lack of empathy. I don't know, they're completely, or they're not actually directly connected, but there's an overlap, I guess. That's the fairest way of saying it. But empathy, you see, I think if there's an absence of empathy, it is very difficult to get the best out of other people and to integrate with other people and to be nice to other people and to understand how important it is. I've always, said that nice is a very small little word, but it costs nothing to be nice to other people as a foundation to your philosophy. And the other thing, as Anne mentioned it, and see what she said, she showed them respect. And I've always said that no matter what happens, always show respect. And it is inevitable that you'll be the recipient of it afterwards. And that is my experience, by the way, of life now. 10 years retired, I meet thousands of people over the last 10 years that have been in prison. I can honestly say that 99.99% of them, are friendly, are nice, and are kind to me now. And that comes from, as always, shown them respect. And I would say that to all your viewers. No matter what the circumstances, never deviate from that. Always show respect. You can be very tough with somebody, you can dismiss them, you can discipline them, but don't do it without showing respect. Because the one thing they'll remember afterwards is, well, he did or she did respect me. She did show kindness to me. And try and give, my final little word would be, and no matter how bleak this, and things are bleak at the moment in many circumstances, but try and give a bit of light as well. Try to encourage, always try to look for the good thing. And I used to always do that with prisoners as well. You've done something horribly bad, you're violent to somebody, but at the end of the day, saying something like, but you're a good guy at the end of the day, you can do better. I don't want this to happen together because you're too good for this to happen. You don't need to do this. And try to get an alternative to violence rather than going bullheaded in. But always give them some light as well, because I come back to it. Human beings always remember kindness, and they always remember.
And I think it's fair to say we could all do with a little bit of more, both to ourselves and to each other. And I'm gonna have to give you the floor for one more minute, and then I think we have to move on.
All right. How to let go. Michelle has asked if we could explain how to let go. I find the best thing is to practice deep breathing. It completely clears your head. And find out how to do it right. You've got to sit, breathe in, hold it for a moment, and then breathe it out for twice the length of your inhale. You can't remember much after that.
No, you're dead right there.
And the answer is to let out whatever anger, irritation, upset is annoying you. Let it out with the breath. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah, it is. I'm a keen mindfulness practitioner, and also just the different various types of breathing techniques just are so useful in times of conflict, of feeling all kinds of emotions. So definitely encourage that as well. So unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time, but I could have spent all day talking to you both. You've got so much wisdom and knowledge, and it's been wonderful for you to come and share that with us today. So thank you very much for coming here and joining with us virtually online for the summit. Right now we've opened up the networking, so if you want to head across there, then you're more than welcome to do so. Take care, everyone. Look after yourselves.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Davina. Bye. Bye.